Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia, here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. This week I have 8 new reviews for you folks here, including a nice review of a webcomic. And before we begin the show, I want to give a quick shout out to Ben Tew, who recommended one of the review books that we're reviewing the show, Ben's Damn Adventure. So thanks, Ben, for recommending the book to me. So this week we're actually going to be reviewing Ben's Damn Adventure, The Prince Has No Pants, also Pizza Mage, Chapter 1 of LitRPG Saga, then A Grim Demise and Even Worse Resurrection, Boneknight Series Book 1, A Dark Fantasy LitRPG Boneknight, a long title. Then also Biomedical Self-Engineering Book number 2, and the webcomic I'm an Evil God. And in addition to that, we'll also be getting 2 reviews from our Iron's Picks of the Weeks segment, and that's going to include the Guildcore Book number 1, Dragonborn, and Sixth Realm Part number 1. And Part number 2, of course, is out as we speak, but this is a review for just the first part of that book. Now, before we get into any of that, so we're going to go into LitRPG news. And LitRPG news, we're going to start off with the nice announcements from Sound Booth Theater, the wonderful audiobook production company who does a lot of LitRPG stuff by a wonderful cast of narrators. And Sound Booth Theater, if you remember a recent news announcement, has decided not just to produce audiobooks, but also to publish them, and to publish them on their own platform specifically. And this is really big because I would say this is a daring step on their part, because Audible controls a huge swath of the marketplace. But by essentially producing and also selling them through their own platform, Soundwave Theater is allowing for less expensive products, but also more revenue for the producers and the authors whose work they're working with. So it works out for everybody. And to update you on that particular story, that Soundwave Theaters actually has an app for you to play the products that you've purchased from them. Currently, it's only available on Android. So if you go look for Sound Booth Theater, Sound Booth being one word, theater being a second word, on the Google Play Store or any other Android app stores, you should see it there. And the news from the company is that Apple and iPhone users will soon have a version of their very own that will be published through that particular app store. So for now, it's just on Android and Google Play. So we'll have a link in the show notes for you to click on if you want to go download that to your phone, so you can play the stuff that you have purchased through Sound Booth on your phone, and with great quality. Okay, in other news, we have Battleborn, written by Dave Womarth, is apparently going to be soon be on Amazon Prime. And if you're not sure what that is, basically, if it's a special book program where there's a selection of books that are going to be free essentially to Amazon Prime members. And in this case, it'll be in the UK and Australia. And I'm probably actually saying the name of the program wrong, but especially in the UK and Australia, you're going to have this book available to you for free for the next 3 to 6 months, depending on which country you're in. Now, this is different than the Kindle Unlimited program, which allows you to buy a select number of books in that program. This is actually available to all Amazon Prime members. I think it's called Prime Reading, the technical name of it, but don't quote me. Either way, link in the show notes for the United Kingdom and Australia. For the United Kingdom, you'll actually be able to get this for free if you're an Amazon Prime member from December the 1st to March the 2nd. And if you're in Australia, you'll be able to get it from December the 1st to June the 2nd. So huge windows of opportunity to download this highly rated, highly enjoyed, including from us, novel from Dave Womarth for free, even if you don't have Kindle Unlimited. So this is a great opportunity. Plus, I believe there's an audiobook version for this. So you might be able to even get a discount on that as well, once you purchase the book, of course. Okay, and other LitRPG news, we have LitRPG and Game Lit Philanthropy. We have 2 stories in this section. The first one comes from the Game Lit Society, and organized by Blaze Corvin, author of many wonderful LitRPG series, including Delvers LLC, which is the most popular one. And every year, Blaze has organized a fundraising campaign, and members of the community all over have contributed to raise money for various programs. And this year, it's happening again. And this year, it'll be for Shriners Hospital for Children. There we go. I know last year we apparently raised over $4,500, or just about $4,500, that was donated to Shriners Hospital for Children. So, and this year, hopefully we can, match or surpass that goal. Blaze Corbin noted in his post of this that he's actually donating to this particular cause in memory of Paul Campbell Jr., a well-known member of the community, who's an author and a fan as well, who passed away just last month. So definitely, if you have the extra cash and I think it's right for people, even a couple bucks will help this particular good cause. We've already, of course, donated from the podcast, and we hope to see a lot of community members do so this year as well. We'll link the show notes, of course. And of course, Blaze always posts the screenshots of his actual donations so that everybody knows, of course, that the funds went through, and it's a big, celebration. Okay, in other LitRPG news, we have philanthropy news. Author Dave Wilmarth announced last week during Thanksgiving that he'd be donating the next $1,000 in royalties from his books to charity. And thanks to the suggestions from the community, reader support, and Dave's own research, those funds have been donated to the Wounded Warrior Project and Sea International. I was thinking this was going to be like a longer term project, but I forgot that Dave does really well in sales and his books are really popular. So as soon as like the new month rolled around, he was like, oh yeah, there you go. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to donate. So I was like, oh wait, I'm just talking about this and you're already done. But we definitely always want to celebrate and recognize the good charity work from our community members, whether it's a group, Gambling Society, or an individual like Dave Wilmarth, who's just giving because he loves people and he's doing this. We want to recognize those good works and encourage members of the community to help out where they can, especially because those with much can help out those without. And I think that's one of the greatest things about a community. Our community as a LitRPG and Gimlet community is that we do so, whether it's of our time or energy or reading and editing or just, being a good community members to each other. So that's why I'm always proud to be part of this community. Okay, on to stuff that has come out now. We have a lot of stories that have come out recently. Haven't read them all, but they've come out last week between this podcast and the last. And that includes Windwalker, an epic LitRPG. This is the second book in the Cyphercraft series. Also the part 2 of the Sixth Realm series, which is in the 10 Realm series, book number 7. This is going to get confusing with book number 6, Sixth Realm, book 7 though, for this series. But it's out now for you to enjoy. Also, the second book in the Dreamstream Reality series is out. A book called The Broken Battle Mage. The Doomsday System book number 1 is out. The Mischievous Merchant, A Bard's Tale is out for you to enjoy. The fourth book in the Beta Tester series is out. The second book in the League of Losers series is out for you if you like book number 1. A new series called Afterlife, The Tower, a LitRPG Dark Fantasy is out. The third and final book, apparently, in the Elemental Dungeon series is out called Hollowed Bones. And there we go. In new audiobooks, we have quite a few new releases here as well. That includes the Idol System book number 6. A lot of fans of that series. The Enchanter, Project Stellar book number 2 is out as an audiobook. The Roman-ish LitRPG series called The Gods and King, Caesar Shadow, is the title, is out for you to enjoy as an audiobook. Also, Afterlife 3 is out. The Fifth Survivor Episode 3 is out as an audiobook, as is a compilation of 3 audiobooks in the Rules series. Books 1 through 3 is out for you to enjoy. I think there are like 30 hours of content here. So if you have 1 credit, this is not a bad place to purchase it. Although I will note that the third book in that series has come out separately. So if you've already purchased book 1 and 2 and you just want book 3, it's also available for you. But for me, it feels like they're going to compete in sales. But hey, if you've never listened to the series or heard it or read it, this is a pretty good value. Also, the Broken Bond Infinite World book number 2 is out as an audiobook. We just reviewed this book not that long ago. We actually reviewed book number 3 recently as well. Wonderful series. I can't recommend this enough. It's a nice story. Good stuff. Also in audiobooks, we have Derelict, book number 2 in that series called Counterattack for you to enjoy. The Song Maid, a LitRPG Journey, Uniworld online trilogy. Book number 1 is out. I believe this is a complete re-release with a new narrator, if I'm not mistaken, for this particular series. Don't quote me though, but there's definitely no cover art. Also out is another online All Hail the Queen. Not that many great reviews for this, whether it's on the audiobook or the ebook side, but it's out. Also, Solomon's Crucible is out for enjoys an audiobook. So that's all the stuff I could find. Searching and scouring Amazon and Audible for you guys. In upcoming LitRPG, we got another list of stuff that's coming out, and that includes December the 8th, it'll be Retribution, The Rise of Resurgence, book number 4. December the 5th, Project Seller, book number 3. December the 13th, The Dungeon Destroyer, The Dungeon Slayer series, book number 2. December the 14th, The Range, book number 1. December the 15th, The Underhill Chronicles, book number 2. December the 15th, Dinosaur Warlord 3. This has been an update to the list here. Eric Rounds was nice to tell us that Couch Potato Crisis, the second book in that series, will be out on December the 15th. On December the 15th, it'll be Dungeon Heart, the Singing Mountains book. December the 16th, the Intern World Network book number 3 will be out. December the 17th, the Guild Core book number 2. December the 18th, the Henchman book number 2. December 21st, a new series from Arthur Stone. I know him best from the Respawn series, which is a Russian RPG apocalypse story. It's called Alpha Zero, Alpha LitRPG book number 1. On December 22nd, it'll be The Bad Guys book number 6. December 23rd, the second book in the Dungeon Seeker series. On December 20th, it'll be Small Unit Tactics volume 2. December the 30th, Primacy Online book number 5. January the 4th, Underdog book number 5. January the 6th, and I spelled that wrong, is going to be the second book in Dungeon Crawler Carl series called Carl's Doomsday Scenario. You gotta love it when the main character fights in his underwear. On January the 12th, Warlock Chronicles book number 2. January the 18th, Rogue Merchant book number 3. January the 19th, The Heavenly Throne book number 4. January 19th, Life in Exile book number 4. January the 20th, Player Reaches the Top book number 4. January 26th, a new story called Underpowered Howard. January 26th, The Battleground Online book number 1. January the 30th is going to be The Alchemia Online Chronicles book number 5. And again, that was a shift from a December release to a January release. On January 31st, it'll be Legends Online book number 8. February the 2nd is a new release, or a new anything in February is just being added this week and going forward. True Grand Crusade, The Adventures of Dan, book number 2. February the 4th, it'll be The Good Guys, book number 10. February the 5th is going to be The Great Centurion Punic Girls, book number 2. On February the 17th, Beta Tester, book number 5. February the 17th as well, it'll be Discardium, book number 6. February 23rd, Jeff the Game Master. On February 25th, last on the list, Wastelands, a real RPG Workshare series. So there we go, all kinds of stuff all the way through February. You got your schedule, and hopefully we'll get some new stuff to add as the weeks go by. But for now, we're on to new releases and reviews. And first up this week is going to be Ben's Damn Adventure, The Prince Has No Pants, written by Salty Waters. It is 267 pages, $3.99. It's not available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. A comedy. All life on Earth has been stolen away by the system, transported to another world at the behest of a distant galactic empire who lived in terror of humanity's potential. Ben was a normal, slightly above average man and had been about to go on his first real vacation of his adult life. Now he must contend with danger and mystery in a world of monsters, magic, and treasure, armed with nothing but his wits and the special item given to him by the system. This is his adventure. Welcome to the world Okay. I'll be honest. That novel description is a lot more serious than this story is. This is a pretty solidly written story. Whose reviewers and readers seem to either really like this or really dislike it. And there's like some really vocal reviewers like, oh, I'm 1 star on this. I think this is the worst thing in the world. And other reviewers like, I love this. This is amazing. And I'm a little bit in the middle, but I still really enjoyed it. I can understand the divide because much of the stories, I think entertainment value or pleasure relies on the sense of humor of the author. And if the sense of humor lands with you, I think you'll enjoy it. If it doesn't, and you read the sample and you're like, I don't like this, you're not going to like the rest of the story because the humor is very much the same. And there are a couple other issues that may be issues for people in that it's a slice of life story and it's a serial story that's continuing to be written online. And it definitely feels like that in the story. And if you're okay with those aspects of it, and you like the humor, I think you'll enjoy this. But if any of those things don't appeal to you, you probably won't, and that's okay. Not every story is written for every reader. I enjoyed it, even though I have some issues with it, which I'll get into overall, because I'm okay with all those things and the humor didn't line with me. This is a super, again, very slice of life story, and it is a serial, and it definitely feels like it. There's a vague plot, I guess, about humanity escaping the dimension that they've all been sent to. But it mostly focuses on the main character and his sometimes crazy and weird adventures, figuring out the rules, fighting monsters, and a little dungeon diving, and some rather odd interactions with the beings that live in this dimension. This is overall a transported to an RPG world story where everyone on Earth is sent to a new dimension. Now, there's a huge, long, expensive setup for this. Like the first 15% is told from the perspective of not the main character, of this intergalactic government entity where the emperor, or I forget what it's called, is coming into power, and he's having a conversation with the last emperor who's like, we exist to keep humanity in check and to make sure they don't spread their crazy biological hazard adaptive species. And it goes on for like really 15%, like exactly how detrimental it would be for humanity to spread and how adaptable they are and how they have acid in their stomachs and biological weapons in there that help them digest their food, and they can eat anything basically as omnivores. And it goes on, and it's meant to be humorous and a little sarcastic and snarky. And for me, it came off very entertaining. And I didn't mind. And I personally don't generally like these long setups. But because of just like the sense of humor and how it's like, oh, that is true about humans, and that gets an international universal scale that might be like, well, we're the predators of the universe, kind of thing. I thought it was funny. And so I didn't mind the exposition, but I can see how a lot of other readers would. Like they would want to get to the RPGs when that stuff doesn't really happen until like you're very much, like 50% of the story. So after that long introduction, then there's like another 30% of the story where the main character is doing character creation, or like this really long introduction to like the various locations he's not going to. And this weird bit where he's just floating in the ocean because that's where he ended up dropping into, and trying to survive there and live and get a hold of his powers and having a shark friend. But like any water dungeon, it kind of goes on too long. And if it wasn't for, again, the sense of humor and the dialogue between the main character and his shark friend, it would probably be boring. But the snarky dialogue and the humor just kind of worked for him. And if I was able to kind of, even though I was a little like, I'm like, this is probably going on too long, kind of push through it. And again, this is where like that serial format comes in, where like the author's just plugging along, writing chapters like, okay, I think this week we're going to go to a water planet and we'll see how, maybe I'm watching Waterworld. Okay, let's see how this works out. And it kind of goes on for a little bit long, but still okay enough to go through it. But again, I can absolutely see other readers not sticking around. After the 50% mark is where it kind of got more interesting for me on a LitRPG level, because that's when the RPG mechanics are introduced. That's when people, the main character, gets levels and classes and races, and there's a lot of like race changing and twists, and you're not really sure what's going to happen next, and there are some decent twists in here, and you get the game stuff that reminds you it's an RPG system. And the RPG system in the story isn't like super heavy. Like it's there and it exists. And from the very get go, you know that a system exists. So it's not like it's not existing at all before this point, but you're not seeing levels. You're not seeing those skill increase notifications for the most part. And instead, the game system is really handled the same, similarly to how it is in the Wandering Inn, where people have classes that they essentially choose, and maybe they have special abilities, but they're increasing their levels only when they're doing things related to those classes. And there's no real clear, defined XP in this particular story, just like there is in the Wandering Inn. Instead, you get major events increasing those levels and getting new abilities and powers. So that's how the RPG system is formally, but there are also notifications that show, yes, this is an RPG world. It's not hidden away that much. Overall, the story and doesn't really feel like it's LitRPG until about the halfway point. Maybe before that, in the beginning, the story feels a little more like it's light gamelit. But again, the humor and the dialogue were just interesting enough to keep me reading until it was actually a LitRPG. And that it was more entertaining for me when you get to more action adventure and exploring and digitizing stuff. And again, I think you'll enjoy this if you're okay with serial stories, if you're okay with maybe not a ton of action, or in the beginning half of the story, or feeling a little lighter the game mechanics, but still enjoying the humor as it comes up in the story. I kind of said that if the humor isn't landing for you in the sample that you read, you're probably not going to like the rest of the story. But if it does land, please continue on, give it a shot. For me, I had an time with it. Give it a score of 7.4 out of 10. I had a few issues where it's like, oh, you're listening to me a little bit with a longer setup, and the water scene, which again could have been summarized or shortened down a lot. So it's not going to get, it's still getting a decent score, a little bit under middle average of good for me. So it's a 7.4 out of 10. That's Ben's Damn Adventure, The Prince Has No Pants, with the score of, again, 7.4 out of 10. And next up, we have Pizza Mage, Chapter 1 of a LitRPG Saga, written by Jesse Frizzell. 23 pages, not long, $2.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Join Dave as he lands a new job at Fantastic, the world's leading gaming company, testing state-of-the-art and immersive gaming hardware as an in-game goblin and the 8th newest player in the realm of Spectacle Online. Okay, short story. Price point is a little too high, but again, under $2.99, the authors get less per percentage. So I understand the price point. It is on Kindle Unlimited. And this short story has an original RPG class, the Pizza Mage, which was enough to get me to pick it up, to be honest. And it kind of has a decent premise, but nothing's really done with it. And the story itself has a number of technical writing issues that made it that I didn't like it. I wanted to like it. I really did. I liked the idea of someone's class being Pizza Mage. It just didn't work out. Like, seriously, there are dialogue issues where there's dialogue without quotes, shifting tenses, missing capitalization, run-on sentences, like just general like writing it, technical writing issues that's hard to ignore. And I know lots of people won't even give it a shot because of that. And ultimately, it feels like somebody's first time writing something, which very well be maybe a serial story that someone just decided to throw on Amazon, see how it was received, and maybe take a shot or edit it at that point. I don't know. On the story side, nothing really happened. That's kind of the downer of it. Like, so the setup and the premise was like, oh, okay, I'm going to give this a shot based upon the fact that I'm hoping it's going to be interesting or funny or humorous, with the title like Pizza Mage. And it just wasn't. Half of the story describes the main character as a delivery pizza man who gets recruited for long-term immersion gaming. It takes half the story to get to the game world. I mean, again, it's a short story. That's like 12 pages. But again, it's still half of the story. The main character chooses to be a goblin mage, and there were a few monster fights. And I'll be honest, too much time was spent, for a short story at least, on the main character being amazed about pain sensations, the realism in the game, and basic game mechanics. Like, if you're going to do a short story where you only have like less than 30 pages, you gotta learn to summarize. You gotta learn to like prioritize the aspects of the story that are going to keep the reader turning pages to be interested. And just too much time was spent on that. And the ability for the main character to actually create pizza or dough in this case only comes in the very last few pages of the story, and that then the story just ends. It really does. And I'm like, oh, okay, that doesn't work for me. And so I didn't really enjoy it. And again, I kind of wanted to. Gets a score of 4 to 10. That's actually a negative score for me. I didn't like this, and here are the reasons why. It's not maybe other people will like it, or or not boring. I was like, nope, this is below that. Didn't enjoy it, and those are the reasons why. So that's Pizza Mage with the score of 4 out of 10. Okay, next up is going to be A Grim Demise and Even Worse Resurrection, Boneknight series, book number 1, a dark fantasy LitRPG, Boneknight, which has a super long title. It's written by Tim Paulson. It is 210 pages, 99 cents. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Mac's coworkers treat him like hot garbage, and his manager is a superficial dolt. It might be worth it if he made more money, but he doesn't. Unfortunately for him, his fate was sealed before he was even born, and it's way worse than working part-time in a coffee shop. Confronted out of the blue by a cackling demonic entity from another world, like a lot of things in Max's life, Max doesn't take it seriously. So when he's yanked by his bones into that world, he's given every disadvantage the demon can dish out. Finding that he's fallen feet first into an old RPG game his dad played on the NES back in the 90s, Max is immediately given 2 quests. Find the imprisoned girl with the green eyes and survive. He's not sure which one's worse. So there you go. I actually like that fundamental premise of the story as it comes through in it, but it didn't really pay off, unfortunately. There were some technical issues with reading this on my phone when I initially got it. I messaged the author. He was very thankful for it. He's like, I'll try to get this straight as soon as possible. But by the time this review was going out, it seems like it's been fixed. So if you are one of those people who read early version on your phone and you notice that there were some missing pages that kind of generally made it unreadable sometimes, give it a shot again. You might enjoy it or you might not. I don't know. But thankfully, hopefully that technical issue has been taken care of. The premise of the story is such that the main character essentially has a crap life. He's literally just kind of whisked away to a retro video game world. And as a monster main character, in this case, a skeleton. And he has this serious goal of saving the world and a multi-book goal of saving this demon princess he kind of only met in a dream for a couple minutes. But fundamentally, it kind of comes down to a slice of life adventure of him trying to level. The main character starts with a skeleton with 1 HP at level 1, but despite all the negatives he has going against him, he has a bonus. He has 1 special attribute to balance it out, or a couple special attributes. He has access to all the jobs available in the game, which is supposed to be super impossible and hard to do. And he just has to stop being killed by low-level monsters to level up and take advantage of this kind of huge boon. And that's the setup of the story. And I like it. I like that setup. I really do. I like the idea. As I was reading, I kept thinking back to Final Fantasy Tactics, where it's a job class system where you can have multiple jobs you can have at the same time, but you can switch between them as long as you've done all the things you need to do to unlock them. I always loved that video game aspect where you could, slot in those. I could switch from a white mage to a fighter to a fencer as the battle required to finish it and beat it, right, or the next level. And part of the fun was just like figuring out how to unlock that. So I thought part of the premise was going to be that, because that's made such a big deal of like, this is his advantage in addition to like not really ever dying. And it didn't pan out, and it was so disappointing. I was like, oh no, it's by the end of it, I was expecting more from that. And I was just like genuinely just kind of disappointed that promising premise just didn't pan out. Instead, the main character picks a level. He picks a brawler class in the story, and he sticks to it, and he just levels that. And it's not even even the leveling itself didn't really make sense in the end of the story, because for a lot of it, it's like, it's really hard to level in this game. And the main character's like, I'm just like that video game I used to play with my dad. I know that's the case. And by the like 80% mark of the story, he's still level 2. And then suddenly, and this is like a tiny bit of spoiler, he faces off against this undefined level character, beats him, and suddenly, bam, he's like 6 levels higher. And I'm like, oh, that feels super cheap. And I was like, no, that just seriously breaks the other parts of your story that you had set up as like consistent game mechanics because you wanted to, bump up the main character's level for like no real apparent reason. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess you're right as the storyteller, I guess, but it really just kind of bugged me. And again, the other part of the story is that the main character can't really die. He's undead. He has this, I forget what it's called technically in the story, like reawaken, rekindle or something. But basically every time he dies as a monster, he just, like, a period of time elapses and he wakes up with his 1 health point again. And I get the respawn system that they're very much inside of video games and MMOs, so I don't have an issue with that. But because it's just him and it's not the other characters in the world, it kind of feels like this cheat that's not really even be taken advantage. It's not like he's using it to like kill these super hard monsters, recovering and killing them again or something, or using it to take down, super evil hard monsters to gain levels or something. It's not used in that respect. It's just kind of things like, oh, he's weak and he gets to repeatedly killed. And that's kind of all it's ever used for. And in addition to that it kind of loses the tension of the story because he's never really going to die permanently. There is some humorous aspects to it where he's like dying in weird, funny ways, and I like that particular use of it. But overall, I think it was an underutilized characteristic in the story. I think that kind of touches on things I did enjoy about the story. Good, decent sense of humor, good banter, decent dialogue. Characters that are in the story aren't uninteresting. They're not super amazing, but they weren't boring either. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of exposition in the story, and there's not really a lot of action, as much action I was hoping for, especially for a story that has this a novel and a series goal of leveling up and getting classes as it's described. There was just not enough action or other actions like quests to kind of justify that kind of story premise of like, oh, we need to level, we need to do this so we can save the demon princess and the world. There's really no sense of urgency, even though there was supposed to be a countdown where he's going to be like killed permanently. To do it, there's really not a ton of urgency in that respect either. So again, I was just expecting a lot of level grinding to get those classes and expectation of like mechanics or the main character's foreknowledge of the system. And then that really happened, unfortunately. Overall, again, a very promising story premise, and I really wanted it to play out in this fun, interesting way, and it just didn't end up doing that. Instead, it's a slice of life story where the main character adventures, has a lot of dialogue with some of the characters, and goes on a few like decently interesting quests, and argues with like the one-eyed demon imp that's trying to stop him from being the chosen one or something. And then that's kind of it. And there's none of the fun stuff I was hoping for from like the really like solidly like interesting premise. So there you go. If none of those things turn you off though, you might like it. I'm giving the book a score of 6 out of 10, and that's mostly because it didn't work for me. That's what this 6 out of 10 is for me. It's like, doesn't work for me. Here are the reasons why. If those aren't reasons that you don't just like a book and you might like other aspects like the dialogue, this might work for you still. So there you go. And that's A Grim Demise and Even Worse Resurrection, Boneknight series book number 1, with the score of a 6 out of 10. And next up we have Biomedical Self-Engineering book number 2, written by John Svensson. It is 418 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Limited, and here's the author's description. Carl thought his life was on track until disaster struck. Now he looks like a 35-year-old and is out of points. So he needs to scramble to change the situation before anyone finds out the truth. The question is, what should he do next? Buy more businesses or focus on his love life? And always in the background is his family, wondering what happened to their father and grandfather and if he will ever talk to them again. So there we go. This is the start of the story. Probably could use a little bit of recap just to remind readers what the whole setup and the premises. And while it starts off in the same slice of life manner that the previous book did, it also kind of grows from that to a degree. In book 1, the progression system was fresh in that the main character got points for his RPG upgrade system by touching people and getting DNA samples. So a lot of the first book was focused on learning about how it worked, how he could adapt it to his own goals, whatever those goals or questions may be, and how to collect those points. And while that was an interesting system and it felt kind of fresh and different, the main character had very few obstacles, which in the story, which made his endeavors feel less triumphant when he was successful. It didn't delete them entirely. It's still like, oh, I'm happy you succeeded, but it didn't feel like there was really any challenges or opponents to his endeavors or successes. So while that didn't make it straight and interesting, it kind of took away from that feeling of success that you want for your characters that you're reading about. In book 2, the author seems to really have gone out of his way to change that and to throw more problems in the main character's path that he has to overcome. And I really enjoyed that change in the story because it made those successes that he eventually has more meaningful. It made them more like, oh yeah, you overcame that, man, or like that person's gonna come and get you and you overcame them. And that series of triumph was definitely kind of in book number 2 for me, at least, because of the various challenges given to the main character, whether they're medical issues, relationship issues, other people finding him on the business side of things, or other aspects that I won't want to spoil for you. And I like the story just a little bit better because of that. There are a few things that did bug me in the story. The quotes at each chapter, beginning of the chapter, definitely bothered me in that they had little or nothing to do with the chapters that followed them. And sometimes those quotes were like a page long or more. And I was like, oh, this is this an essay on the banks and money systems? That doesn't have anything to do with the story in any way, shape, or form. Maybe their commentaries they're supposed to be foreshadowing or something, but they didn't work for me, and ended up skipping some of the longer ones. And even the short ones that I read, I was like, oh, that's an interesting quote. Ain't got nothing to do with this chapter though, or the story in general. And so that was just like a small thing that kind of bugged me. Also, I would have liked to have seen a villain of some kind, or like an antagonist in the story. And maybe there's a little bit set up by the end of the book, but it's not really developed. And so for the most part, the problems the main character overcomes are just like things in his way, but there's no like villain who's opposing him for any of the things he's doing in the story. Overall, still a very entertaining story. Lots of people have really enjoyed book number 1 and book number 2. This is very much, again, a slice of life story, as the author even pointed out in the novel description, where the main character is still trying to progress in his goals in business, which is a fun aspect of seeing, and how he's doing his RPG power system in real life. There is less emphasis in this one of him gaining points necessarily. There's still a little bit of it, but he's kind of expanding past that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a shift in the story. But I still like it. It is, again, very slice of life. It's a real life RPG story where the main character has an RPG system, and he's using it to kind of improve his life in the same way that it's like the Level Up series by Dan Sergaloff, if you've ever read that. A very similar kind of concept that plays out a little bit differently. So I had a good time with it. I, again, liked it a little bit more than book number 1 for me. I gave it a score of 7.5 out of 10. That's Biomedical Self-Engineering book number 2 with a score of 7.5 out of 10. And next up we have I'm an Evil God, written and I should done the artwork by, I'm going to say this the best I can, Shide Meng Wang. It's 96 plus chapters right now. It's free weekly updates on the chapters as well, which is always a plus. There is no English publisher, but there is a publisher in the original language. So if you want to support them there, feel free to do so. And here's the novel description. Webcomic description. Across the realms is the manliest and most handsome evil god in history. The peerless beauty Man Xian crossed over and fell into the vixen's lair. In order not to be drained of his entire life force, he travels between various realms, cuts down a son of a god, and repels the Confederacy Yang Yi. This is the story of how he eventually becomes an evil god. Okay. This webcomic was recommended to me by the LitRPG author Charles Dean, friend, and I thank him for it. It ended up being delightful. I had originally read the first couple of chapters like, no, and then I gave it another chance because Charles Dean recommended it to me as a favorite of his, and it ended up being really enjoyable, and I kind of like binged, all the chapters And I'm super glad the new chapters come out on a weekly basis. This is a combination of a reincarnation story, cultivation, wuxia, and an RPG system. The main character dies in our world, is reincarnated into the body of a low-level loser on a cultivation martial arts world, who is going to die soon because his essence, or life essence, is being drained by his cultivating wife. There's a whole kind of subplot of how she's doing this kind of evilish martial cultivation thing where she's essentially stealing his life essence through sex, and it's a whole little subplot. But regardless, the main character has to survive the drain of his essence and also learn how to cultivate and become powerful enough to survive in this cultivation martial arts world. And it's a fun story, really, in that the main character has this RPG system where you can collect points for strong emotions directed towards him, and then purchase levels in any cultivation, martial, or spiritual technique that he's learned. And so the story ends being where the main character does a bunch of weird acts just to get emotional responses so that he can survive, and so he's not so weak. And he does intentionally things that are going to make him hated or loved or despised or jealous. And there's all these like weird acts that he's doing in this world to try to get these emotional responses from real. And that's part of the fun of the beginning, probably to the mid part of the story. The other part of the story is him trying to figure out ways to gain techniques, whether it's cultivation or spiritual or martial techniques, so that he can become strong in this world where the powerful rule. And the way he does that is not just in the main world, but he also actually goes to these parallel universes through the system to complete quests and learn techniques and earn more points. And this parallel world aspect is probably the other part of the story that I thought was really enjoyed, because these other worlds aren't just cultivation worlds. They're sometimes cultivation worlds, but they're also at varying levels of cultivation, and they're also ranged from like ancient worlds to ancient like martial art worlds to the modern world. And so there's a bunch of like opportunities for like really interesting stories to be told in this universe, and a lot of these little they're just essentially side stories of the main character doing this are really entertaining on their own. There's a huge variety of like different types of stories and poking fun at the different genres in what he's doing. And so they're always like these nice little breaks in the main storyline for these like parallel universes. And he's always getting techniques and that are applicable towards the main world as well. So it's always fun, interesting stuff there. Okay, and I'm going to show you real quick a sample of the artwork. I'm pulling up a chapter here, and as you can see, the nice clean artwork. There is a nice sense of humor that's funny and jokey, and you can see that the RPG system is definitely part of the story very clearly. So like I said, good artwork, good story, very, very entertaining, and again, the side stories are as entertaining as the main story. So there are also nice breaks in the storytelling. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. And I give this series a score of 7.8 out of 10. There you go. For I'm an Evil God, gets a score of, again, 7.8 out of 10. And next up we have Iron Picks of the Week. There you go. This is a segment of the show where a longtime community member and reviewer, Ian Mitchell, sends us his reviews that he's done. And he's nice enough to let us, let them be a part of the show. He also generally reads some different things for me. So it's a great way to increase the number of titles that we get to review on a weekly basis. And first up this week from him is going to be The Guildcore Dragonborn, a dungeon adventure written by T.J. Reynolds. It is some pages. I have kind of run that to say, don't skip the stuff at the end. I love this one. Something about level of detail, I think, often descriptive text feels bolted on. Not here, feels organic. The part of the story in Band's Dungeon really impressed me. A bit like perfect accessories, decor, spices, a lived-in hobbit home versus the living room with a plastic covers on the couch. So Ban and Kai's meeting training montage was a joy to read for me and not just filler I want to skip. I love Jonathan Burke's various dungeon core books, and I like this one aspect of TJ's book better. Personal preference, like me preferring bowling over golfing. The multiple POVs didn't bother me. They often do. That was handled well. I think this is enough. Not my top 5, wasn't intense enough for that, but I had a great time reading this. And again, he gives it a score of 8.9 out of 10. So that's a really great review score from Ian Mitchell. He's also sent us a review this week for Sixth Realm, book number 1 in Liberty's Fantasy Series, 10 Realms, book number 6 by Michael Shadfield. He says, I like the characters. I like Rugrat, Eric, and what they've built, especially at the beginning. The POV jumped around way too much for my taste. I'm assuming in this one. It seems strange for me to say I had character overload. There's a tournament, which I rather enjoyed. Also some raids on orcs in a 6th realm dungeon. A decent continuation. Rugrat and Eric are fun characters. The skeleton, not so funny anymore. The many subthreads made feel things more diffuse. I felt this way in later Emerillia books as well. And I'm going to agree to that. In both the Emerillia series and this one, as the stories continued on in multiple books, books 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever the case is, the stories just get really big. There's a lot of characters to manage. And if you're not reading them back to back to back, sometimes those characters kind of feel like, who was that again? And why am I following their story? But that's just the way that the author writes, apparently. So it is part of it. But Ian here gives them a score of 7.8 out of 10, which is still a really good, enjoyable score from Ian. And he gives the 6th one, part 1 of the 10 Realm series a score of 7.8 out of 10. And that's the end of Iron's Picks of the Week. Okay, that is the end of this show, folks. Thanks a lot for hanging out so much with me today. Thanks for allowing me to talk about the thing that I love, LitRPG, and listening to me geek out about it. We'll have links in the show notes if you want to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, or our website where we have our database up over 1,000 LitRPG stories and reviews that we've done over the years. You can also find the podcast if you're listening to us on Spotify and Audible and all your regular podcasting apps. So and we'll also have links in the show notes for places you can talk to your favorite authors and other readers and get recommendations for new things to read or just talk about goofy stuff. And thanks again for hanging out this week, folks. And until we can hang out again, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.